Excellent. Tonight we're on the New Testament Code. This is session 3. I'm going to do some backstories because I left my book in the car, and the car is right now in Hohenwald, Tennessee, and I'm in Vero Beach. So I read through it and I made notes. The notes are there. I can remember some of it. I believe it's begins with Stephanos and James. But there's some really good backstories on that particular chapter that he doesn't go into at any length. It's a good thing he didn't, because if he had, the book would never be finished. It would go on and on and on. Last night, I spent in Hartsfield Airport in Atlanta all night. I was in Tennessee, in Cleveland, for Jackie Bosher's ordination, and that was really nice. It went wonderfully. And as usual, Bishop Ragesh used far more oil than he needed to. And there was oil every place, but that's something you don't forget once you've been oiled up like that. And I do have video of the whole thing, and Clark's ordination as well, that I need to put up here pretty soon. But anyway, I've been sick since we left. The day we left on the Shabbat, I woke up and threw up immediately, but I thought, this is planned, we're going to go. So we went, and I was not able to drive, just too nauseated. We got up there, and I had 2 days that were pretty miserable. And so I saw a flight a few days ago that would get me back here to Vero very inexpensively. I happened to hit upon one of those unusual flights where you can just spend very little and get where you want to go. And so I booked it immediately just in case. So the time came up to take the flight, and the flight was at like 9:30 at night. And so Lee got me to the airport in Atlanta from Tennessee about noon. Let's see, my days are a little mixed up. What day would that have been? Monday? This is Tuesday, right? Okay, Monday at about noon. So I had many hours to wait around there. And I found a place to plug my computer in, and I worked and worked and worked on YouTube videos and the website and all that stuff. There's nothing else to do. I worked until 4 o'clock in the morning. See, my flight was supposed to go at about 9:30, 10. However, when I looked over my ticket when I got there, they said, you got this fare on a flexible schedule, because you were flexible. Well, that flexibility led to the ticket being for Tuesday, not Monday. So here, when I found that out, I found that there was one left for Monday's night flight. So I got in line, and by the time I got to the front of the line, that ticket was gone. And so I asked them about another flight. They said, yes, there was one at 5:15 in the morning, and there was one left on there. So I was able to get that ticket changed without any more cost. So I spent a long time in the airport. I can tell you one thing. There's no place comfortable at Hartsfield International Airport. No place. So I just parked myself at a table between the Burger King and the IHOP restaurant. There's kind of a lounge area there where people come and eat. And I began to work, and I enjoyed myself a lot. I went up to the chapel. There's an interfaith chapel at the airport. It's in a very obscure place. You'd probably never find it unless you were looking for it, which I was. that was a peaceful place. I got to go up there in the afternoon and go sit on a chair. There was nobody in there. And I actually fell asleep for a little bit in the Interfaith Chapel. And I felt holiness there, if you can believe that. Yes, sometimes you feel when you go into a sacred space, you feel the sacrosanctness of the place. And I certainly felt it there. And another fellow came in and sat way behind me, and he was praying. I don't believe that he was a Christian. I think he might have been a Muslim or something, because I didn't recognize the language of the prayers at all. I mean, usually I can understand prayer language, but still the place felt very holy. I tried to find a place to crash when it got into the wee hours of the morning. I was not feeling good at all. And so nothing would satisfy. Nothing would satisfy. I went outside and sat on the benches for a while. Then I sat in a wheelchair. And then I went back to my original place. But what happened was that I saw Jesus. Yes, I did. I did. The King of Kings. Of course, where would the king go if he were to come in? Well, he'd go to the place of the kings. He went to the Burger King, got himself some chicken fries. I say Jesus because I saw this guy, bandy-legged, Jewish-looking guy with the beard and the hair, and immediately I thought, Jesus is there. He sat down on a table, about 10 feet away, and facing me, and I could hardly keep my eyes off this guy. Nobody probably thought I was some old kook, which of course I am, but he enjoyed his chicken fries, and the whole time I thought, can this be Jesus walking among us? When he finished his chicken fries, he walked away. That was the end of it. No interaction. I should have gone up and asked him if he was Jesus. I should have. I felt like I should have. Like in the chapel, there was a holiness there. I don't know anything about the guy. He could have been a, I don't know, jaywalker or something like that. Yeah, John saw him, but this guy was not wearing a white robe. He was just wearing kind of 70s clothes. Kind of like if you were a part of the 70s Jesus movement, late 60s, 70s. I was part of that. There's a young man. It's kind of like, you know, you drove around in a van, you kind of looked like a hippie. Everybody wanted to look like Jesus at that time. He was kind of like that type. But he went away, and then a little later, I saw Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney, spitting image of Paul McCartney. Now, I thought by the end of the day, I've seen Jesus, I've seen Paul, I've seen religion, I've seen it all. But I saw Jesus, and harps went off in my mind. Honest to goodness. Well, I was pretty flaked out by then. I'd slept much for 3 or 4 days. Pretty flaked out. So I've been thinking about that ever since. Why it's important to me is that I believe that if he did go away in the first place, which I'm not so sure he did, that no, John, not PCP, more like KRATOM, that I really do believe he's walking among us right now. I believe that we are in the millennium. And, if I'm going to believe something like that, I can probably make a pretty good case for it. Where is he? People have had stories about picking up the hitchhiker Jesus, or praying to the baker woman Jesus, or seeing Jesus sitting on the steps of the church, not being allowed to go in. Or Jesus says Joshua, a little cabin outside of town in the woods where he lives very frugally and goes to a different church every Sunday, kind of thing. Maybe you remember the Joshua stories that were popular in the 90s. So my plane finally debarked, and it was a very short trip from Atlanta to Orlando. And I got home, laid in the back of the car. Mary picked me up. Laid in the back of the car on the way home, got home, went straight into the bed and lay down for a couple hours. Then I got my head together a little bit. And I thought, well, I can do this tonight. I really hated missing Friday night. I really hated that. But that was part of the nausea. Now, it's been 2 weeks since I took that radiation treatment for stress test. I don't get on that walking thing. What do you call those things? Treadmill. I don't get on that anymore. Instead, they give you some kind of a shot that opens up your vessels all over the place so they can gauge if you've got blockages. And then they give you a shot of thallium isotope. Now, that's what does you in right there. It's supposed to be out of your body in 24 hours. You drink a lot of water. And then before you go from the appointment, they give you a big shot of saline to try to get it out of there. But that's when this nausea started. And now it's been a couple of weeks. I'm going to go in Thursday, if you don't mind me telling my personal story here, because I've been having trouble now with my left leg. Goes dead after walking, probably 100 feet. The whole leg will just go dead. I can't go anyplace else. Don't trust in Western medicine. Give me a break, John. Sometime you'll have to trust in Western medicine, like if you use a CPAP machine every night. Man, I'm so tired of people telling me all you need is a tonic, a few leaves, and a capsule filled with pieces from a prayer towel. Give me a break. I have severe advanced cardiac artery disease and what's that other one, Alice? I can't remember. Arthritis, a type of arthritis that goes to your organs with inflammation. That stuff won't help me anymore. I've been on Western medicine now 35 years, and I've long outlived my lifespan. And generally, I'm feeling pretty good, although I try to do what's healthy, and I do. But this plan works for me. Oh, I'm getting a lot of comments now. John says again, I'm healthy. I don't look it, but I am. Now, I'll tell you something about John. He's a lot of fun. He's a fun guy. We've got to pal around different times, and I think last time I went to Hohenwald, I was there with John. But John's kind of a kook too, John Schoon. I remember he came down when we chartered, when we got together and decided to go into the religious business there with the Yahad, January 2016. We were camping out at the church, and maybe I shouldn't tell this story, but John locked himself in a room in the church for 3 days. And there he sat in a chair in there for 3 days, sleeping. And we all thought on the outside, if you recall, is he dead? Is he still alive in there? Tried to get in the door, he had it locked. It was so funny. We thought, we're going to have to knock the door down here to get John out, pull him out. Next time, if he does come out, we're going to tie a rope to his leg. Pull him out if we need to. Well, yeah. But look, John, we had a great time. We always do. In fact, like I mentioned last time you were on, I just found your suitcase here full of dirty underwear and your apple rolling around in the car now for 6 months. I hope you can come give a presentation this year at Sukkot. Put a plug in, October 3rd through 12th, top of the mountain at Hohenwald. As a matter of fact, that's where I was supposed to be today. I got a call 5 minutes before this started from Lee. Commander Lee was up at the gate trying to get in to the mountaintop, couldn't get in the gate. So we're hoping that that issue is resolved and he can get up there. And yes, it's going to be in Hohenwald this year. And I can't wait, really. We're going to have a good time. I'm just starting to put together the order, things we're going to do and so forth. I really did miss getting to go up there and talk and help plan everything with those that own and manage that property. But it's in good hands with the commander, and he promised to make pictures and give us a report just as soon as he got a report to give. I guess I'll look at the chat a little bit here, just a moment. The side effects. Well, the side effects of that radiation, I think they are horrible. But as far as the medication I take, and I do take a lot of it, I don't seem to have any side effects from that other than ED. But what would I use that for anyway? Okay. We're going to have to edit that out of here. Couldn't ED stand for something else? How about just Ed? Yes, Allison, he'll do a great job. He's Lee, since he's become Pastor Lee, he has gotten excited again. And he is on a mission. After all, he is a Sholiak, an apostle or a missionary. So he's up there doing a mission. Again, John says, ED is my middle name. All right. Not that kind of ED. Well, that's enough of my story. I'm back here and haven't had much sleep, but I feel real good, as you can tell. And I'm going to start out here with an obscure text. See if I have it. I sure hope so. Oh, yeah, it's over here. I believe I've got it online here. It's a text called, no, wait a minute. Where is it? It disappeared. I have to look it up real quick. Again, I'm sorry. It's a mystic from a couple centuries ago that had visions. A lady mystic and Emmerich. All right, I got her name. I had this all ready to go, but I don't know. Anne Catherine Emmerich. We find her text. Anne Catherine Emmerich was well, I should say her visions and stories were what brought about Mel Gibson's interpretation of the Passion of the Christ. From the visions of Emmerich came a number of different scenes there. One that I can think of right off the bat was when Jesus was pierced. The shooting out in such a fashion of water and blood was right out of Emmerich. I've got to find this teaching again. I'm sorry. I don't seem to be. Here it is. This book of visions is called The Dolorous Passion of Our Lord Jesus Christ. You know that Mel Gibson is a Catholic and a pretty dedicated one. And so this would be something that would be bantered about in the Catholic Church and read to some extent. Let me see, I've got a table of contents, I hope. I have to look this all up again. But I want you to hear a little of it because it has to do with what we did last week with the Mandylion and a little bit of the Shroud. And I want to talk about the Shroud too. And there's a couple other texts that I think you would be very interested in. And that is, one is called the Acts of Addai. Addai. The Acts of Addai. In other words, the Acts of Thaddeus, as he goes over to Adiabene. The whole story's told there. I wanted to go through some of that. Also, there is Doctrina Addai, or the Doctrine of Addai, which gives some of Thaddeus' teaching that you can find at sacred texts or about any place. Generally, you'll find it under the Latin name, Doctrina. And two other really interesting texts that, well, I think they're spurious, of course, but they are very interesting, and those are the Gospel of Nicodemus, and the second part of that is called the Acts or Death of Pilate. So in those testaments, the entire trial is recalled, including the dialogue of the trial of Jesus before the Sanhedrin. It's very interesting, but you can see through it if you read it critically. Still, it's a very, very interesting text to read. They're usually both together there. They come together in a many-chapter document called the Archon. Sorry. Now I'm getting just like Allison Gary now. That is to say, I'm sorry. Here we are. I found it. It's in the Dolorous Passion. I think dolorous means happy. Better look that one up. The Dolorous Passion, it's chapter 33, I think. 34, chapter 34, depending on where you look it up at. Let me give you a link here to this, the version that I'm looking at anyway. And note, talk here about the woman with the issue of blood, what she is called, how she is named in the various testaments here that I'll be talking about. Chapter 34, the veil of Veronica. While the procession was passing through a long street, an incident took place which made a strong impression upon Simon. Numbers of respectable persons were hurrying toward the temple, of whom many got out of the way when they saw Jesus, from a pharisaical fear of defilement, while others, on the contrary, stopped and expressed pity for his sufferings. But when the procession had advanced about 200 steps from the spot where Simon began to assist our master in carrying his cross, the door of a beautiful house on the left opened, and a woman of majestic appearance, holding a young girl by the hand, came out and walked up to the very head of the procession. Seraphina was the name of the brave woman who thus dared to confront the enraged multitude. She was the wife of Sirach, one of the counselors belonging to the temple, and was afterwards known by the name of Veronica, which name was given from the words Vereicon, Vereicon, which means true portrait. That's important. She's called Veronica because she was for a time the keeper of what we called last week the Mandylion, that is the face of Yeshua washed onto a towel or painted onto a towel or bled onto a towel. So she became known as Vereicon or Veronica, when actually the painting itself, or the Mandylion, was called the Veronica, the true portrait, to commemorate her brave conduct on this day. Mrs. Gary, if you would, look up the name Seraphina and see if you can find the meaning of that name. I have a pretty good idea that that came originally from Hebrew. It looks like seraph to me. I think that, let's see, there are these seraphim and cherubim. Cherubim are the sword angels, and seraphim, I think, are fire angels. But take a look and see and let us know. Seraphina had prepared some excellent aromatic wine, which she piously intended to present to our master to refresh him on his dolorous way to Calvary. Dolorous can't mean happy. She had been standing in the street for some time and at last went back into the house to wait. She was, when I first saw her, enveloped in a long veil and holding a little girl of 9 years of age whom she had adopted by the hand. A large veil was likewise hanging on her arm, and the little girl endeavored to hide the jar of wine when the procession approached. Because in those days, you were not allowed to have wine until you were at least 17 by law. Those who were marching at the head of the procession tried to push her back, but she made her way through the mob, the soldiers and the archers, reaching Jesus, fell upon her knees before him and presented the veil, saying at the same time, "Permit me to wipe the face of my master." Jesus took the veil in his left hand, wiped his bleeding face, and returned it with thanks. Seraphina kissed it and put it under her cloak. The girl then timidly offered the wine, but the brutal soldiers would not allow Jesus to drink it. The suddenness of this courageous act of Seraphina had surprised the guards and caused a momentary, although unintentional, halt, of which she had taken advantage to present the veil of her divine master. Both the Pharisees and the guards were greatly exasperated, not only by the sudden halt, but much more by the public testimony of veneration, which was thus paid to Jesus. And they revenged themselves by striking and abusing him, while Seraphina returned in haste to her house. Oh, there is a full definition right here. Thank you. Yes, the higher order of angels. And one was renamed Veronica. Cool. Thank you. No sooner did she reach her room than she placed the woolen veil on a table and fell almost senseless on her knees. A friend who entered the room a short time after found her thus kneeling with a child weeping by her side and saw, to his astonishment, the bloody countenance of our master imprinted upon the veil, a perfect likeness, although heart-rending and painful to look at. He roused Seraphina and pointed to the veil. She again knelt down before it and exclaimed through her tears, "Now I shall indeed leave all with a happy heart, for my master has given me a remembrance of himself." The texture of this veil was a species of very fine wool, and it was 3 times the length of its width. It was generally worn on the shoulders. What is this describing here? This is just not a face cloth. Think about it. It was customary to present these veils. Oh, this sidebar keeps popping up here. I'm sorry. Got it. Face veils to persons who were in affliction or over-fatigued or ill, that they might wipe their faces with them. And it was done in order to express sympathy or compassion. Veronica kept this veil until her death and hung at the end of her bed. It was then given to the Blessed Virgin, who left it to the apostles, and they afterward passed it on to the church. Now, Seraphina and John the Baptist, they were cousins, her father and Zacharias being brothers. When Joachim and Anna brought the Blessed Virgin, who was then only 4 years old, up to Jerusalem to place her among the virgins in the temple. Question, were there virgins in the temple? They lodged in the house of Zacharias, which was situated near the fish market. Seraphina was at least 5 years older than the Blessed Virgin, was present at her marriage with Saint Joseph, and was likewise related to the aged Simeon, who prophesied when the child Jesus was put into his arms. She was brought up with her sons, both of whom, as well as Seraphina, he imbued with his ardent desire of seeing our master. When Jesus was 12 years old and remained teaching in the temple, Seraphina, who was not then married, sent food for him every day to a little inn, a quarter of a mile from Jerusalem, where he dwelt when he was not in the temple. That could be one of a couple places. Think of Emmaus, for instance. Think of his sister Shalome's home, where in the Egyptian Gospels, he is said to have lounged on her couch and eaten her food and spoken of things of the kingdom. Mary went there for 2 days. When on her way from Bethlehem to Jerusalem to offer her child in the temple, the 2 old men who kept this inn were Essenes and well acquainted with the Holy Family. It contained a kind of foundation for the poor, and Jesus was his disciple. Jesus and his disciples often went there for a night's lodging. Ah, look at that. I don't remember that being in there. Seraphina married rather late in life. Her husband, Sirach, was descended from the chaste Susanna. and was a member of the Sanhedrin. You don't know about Susanna unless you have the Greek Jewish writings that are between the Testaments. There's a section of Daniel that we don't find in Protestant type Bibles where Susanna was a righteous woman of Israel that was tried for enticing two judges to sexual immorality, when in fact these judges went to great extremes to seduce Susanna. And fortunately, when they had gotten her alone in the woodland outside of town, Daniel, the prophet, just happened to be coming through, hid himself away behind a tree, and saw exactly what was going on, popped out, accused them of trying to molest a woman, a virgin of Israel, to which they swore that they would get him. Then in Susanna, there is a court trial as well, where these judges are officiating against Susanna. And Daniel comes in as the attorney for the defense, and he, through his word, so bamboozles them all that they take the judges out and hang them or something. Well, I would sure like to see something like that today. Not that the judges would be hanged, but rather that they would be stoned. Her husband Sirach was descended from the chaste Susanna and was a member of the Sanhedrin. He was at first greatly opposed to our master, and his wife suffered much on account of her attachment to Jesus and to the holy women. But Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus brought him to a better state of feeling, and he allowed Seraphina to follow our master. When Jesus was unjustly accused in the court of Caiaphas, the husband of Seraphina joined with Joseph and Nicodemus in attempts to obtain the liberation for our master, and all three resigned their seats in the council. Seraphina was about 50 at the time of the triumphant procession of our master when he entered into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. And I then saw her take off her veil and spread it on the ground for him to walk upon. It was this same veil which she presented to Jesus at this his second procession, a procession which outwardly appeared to be far less glorious, but was in fact much more so. This veil obtained for her the name Veronica, and it is still shown for the veneration of the faithful. Now, the claim is that this Saint Emmerich, who was a nun and, of course, afflicted badly in bed for years and didn't eat anything but the Eucharist for 3 or 4 decades, these are visions of hers. Visions. So the books she writes are full of visions. And I really marveled when I started reading this some years ago when The Passion of the Christ came out, to see what Mel's process of understanding the entire matter of the Passion through the eyes of a visionary. All right, that's enough of that. The doctrine of Adai. I have done a lot on this. I should say a lot. I did one show on it. I want to give you the link to that because this, I can't read all this, but it's backstory and it's important to have. It's important to know if you want to be a scholar about these things, especially the New Testament code. You can't understand anything in that book unless you know the sources. And even the sources have sources. And many sources he doesn't even quote because there's not room or time. But this particular link, I believe, gives you readings from both the Doctrine of Adai and the Acts of Adai. I thought I would take a little bit of time here to read a little of these doctrines of Adai. Maybe not. Time's running out already. I've got other things to get on to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a link to this as well. I like to record this whole thing because it's packed full of stuff. As well as the Gospel of Nicodemus, because all these are all related to each other. I really want to record Gospel of Nicodemus and Acts of Pilate because there's so much dialogue in there. So many people speaking in turn. It says the Palm Sunday procession was the second. When was the first? I think when he actually came into Jerusalem. Remember, these Essenes, they didn't go in Jerusalem generally. They were not welcome there. And they believed that the entire city was supposed to be holy and that it had been dirtied by the usurping priesthood that was there, that not only didn't do anything right, but even when they were sacrificing, they were worshiping other gods and practicing immorality at the same time. Remember those priests that were appointed by the Herods and before that, the Maccabees? They were of the wrong family, and they were appointed primarily because they were willing to associate with the secular, even foreign powers, and conform their morality to the foreigners, to the point where they were just no longer religious leaders. They were something like butchers that used the vast quantities of mammon that they received for what they did to enrich themselves and to consume before the people, to the point consume, buy stuff, be rich, show themselves off as the rich with everything, to the point where the people hated them. They were not religious at all. Oh, what stories we could tell about these guys. Like the real Nicodemus, Nakdimon, rabbi, spoken of as wearing 6 feet long tzitzit, along with another one, Rabbi Sabua ben something, 6 foot long tzitzit that were carried behind him by 6 disciples so that the tzitzit would never touch the ground. And his daughter was so holy. You remember this story, of course. It's crazy that she had delightful little pillows made. And every time she took a step outside of her quarters, there was a servant to put a pillow down. Thank you, conspicuous consumption. To put a pillow down beneath her foot so her foot wouldn't touch the ground. And she was hailed as a great benefactor to the people because once she used the pillow, she would give it to the poor. A lot of pillows to the poor. That was a great mitzvah. So conspicuous consumption to the max. So many other great stories from that early literature about the way that these people showed their riches, and they might be some fictions because, of course, we do the same thing today. We think about rich people. I mean, I'm talking about the super rich in terms of ingloriousness. We just don't like them. We would like to have what they have. We just don't like them. Gospel of Nicodemus, I give you that one. I want to go on now, something different. Oh, we're done. There's more to do on this whole story of the veil, but I think I'll do that by myself. I only got time to go into one more topic. I think I mentioned last week that the common idea for the shroud these days, especially since we read that text there, that the vision was that the shroud was long and folded up, that the Mandylion is actually the shroud, the face of the shroud on the top of a folded long garment or sheet of some kind. So there is a question as to whether the Mandylion and the shroud aren't the same thing right now. In the last decade, there has come an amazing theory in regards to the shroud. And thus, if the two are the same, the Mandylion too. And that is, since the first, some have detected on the shroud faint letters of different languages. I should set up a pay-for-play station on this stuff, really. Would you help me pay my bills by paying $5 a month for some of this obscure stuff? Nobody knew what those letters are that were so faintly on the shroud. Well, just in the last decade, a Vatican scholar of the secrets of the Vatican claims that what those letters are, when they're put together from 3 different languages, I might speak, 3 different alphabets, looking like they're randomly put on this shroud very, very lightly, is a death certificate on the Shroud of Turin. I'll read a little from an article here. It's Dr. Barbara Frail, who's kind of, since she came out with this, she's kind of disappeared. I don't know if the Vatican or somebody's got her in a dungeon someplace. Probably the Calvinistic Reformed Church has her in a dungeon in some church basement. A researcher, Barbara Frail, in the Vatican Secret Archives. Wouldn't you like to get in there? Take some translator along with you? Oh, you could spend your whole life in there. I could. Said, well, okay, take the wind out of my sails, understudy. I think I have managed to read the burial certificate of Jesus the Nazarene or Jesus of Nazareth. Now, she's saying the Nazarene, but then she's kind of backing herself up with the Orthodox viewpoint that he came from Nazareth. She said that she had reconstructed it from fragments, Greek, Hebrew, and Latin. You know, all 3 of those have different alphabets. writing imprinted on the cloth together with the image of a crucified man. However, Dr. Frail, who is to publish her findings in a new book, La Sidon de Jesus Nazareno, looks to me like that's Italian, said that the inscription provided, quote, historical date consisted with the Gospel's account. The letters, barely visible to the naked eye, were first spotted during an examination of the shroud way back in 78, and others have since come to light since then. This reminds me so much of the Copper Scroll, because with those Greek letters posted here and there in different places, just like some kind of code or message to the wise. Some scholars have suggested that the writing is from a reliquary attached to the cloth in medieval times. But Dr. Frail said that the text couldn't have been written by a medieval Christian because it didn't refer to Jesus as the Christ, but as the Nazarene, speaking of a sect rather than a place, or rather than the Christ. The point being made here is the medieval church, of course, would call him the Christ, rather than using some term like Nazarene. This would have been heretical in the Middle Ages, since it defined Jesus as only a man, rather than the Son of God. What's my opinion on the divinity of Yeshua? Well, I had a friend get in touch with me yesterday while we were driving to the airport, who had accused me, a close friend, of being a heretic and not believing in the Holy Spirit. Now, I've known this person for years. We've talked about spiritual things, and the person's been in my classes as well. She says, you don't believe in the Holy Spirit. Where did you get that? Well, I don't know, but I've known all this time you didn't believe in the Holy Spirit. The point is, people get the wrong ideas. The idea here is you don't believe in the Trinity, at least not the part of the Trinity that says that these emanations of the Trinity are of one substance. That's illogical. Our Father is a logical Father. Some man made that up. So, like the image of the man himself, the letters are in reverse and only make sense in negative photographs. Dr. Frail told La Repubblica that under Jewish burial practices current at the time of Messiah, in a Roman colony such as Palestine, a body buried after a death sentence could only be returned to the family after a year in a common grave. And that is absolutely a fact. Of course, in this case, you lay somebody out and allow the flesh itself to decay, while at the same time you preserve as much as you can, because you've got people still in the Jewish tradition that you wouldn't take the body out, you'd leave it there and go visit that body. You'd even have meals with that body. That was called the triclinia. They would actually come in with the decaying body there on the table, and you'd eat your meals with them. Some sources say to 7 days after the death. Other sources say 7 weeks. Imagine. Dr. Frail said that many of the letters were missing, with Jesus, for example, being referred to as Jesu, Nazarenos, An interesting spelling here, 2 sets of double N's in Nazarenos, double N-A-Z-A-R-E, double N-O-S, and only the I-B-E-R of Tiberiu, or of Tiberius, is Tiberio, what it means, surviving. Her reconstruction, however, suggested that the certificate read, I'd say this is pretty clear that it reads this, but I will read the other side of the story as well here in a minute. In the year 16 of the reign of Emperor Tiberius, let's see, Tiberius came in at the death of Augustus in 14. If we add 16 years roughly to that, we're going to get 30 or so, right? Okay. In the year 16 of the reign of the Emperor Tiberius, Joshua the Nazarene, taken down in the evening after having been condemned to death by a Roman judge because he was found guilty by a Hebrew authority, is hereby sent for burial with the obligation of being consigned to his family after only 1 full year. It ends signed by, but the signature hasn't survived. Dr. Frail said the use of 3 languages, Greek, Latin, Hebrew, was consistent with the polyglot, which means a variety of tongues or languages, nature of a community of Greek-speaking Jews in a Roman colony. I keep suggesting that the main language of these Jews in Israel at this time was Greek, and that the Gospels, the New Testament, certainly Paul, is originally in Greek. Why in the world would they write it in Aramaic? That won't impress anybody. It's like you having a vision of the Almighty in Cambodia, and he gives you the greatest news ever heard by humankind, and you decide that your mission is to give this out to the entire world. And you write it out and have it published in Cambodian. Get it? There's a lingua franca, the language that has value in a world. Right now it happens to be English. I get disappointed when I see some of these scholarly papers and books written in German or Italian. So many great books on Qumran are written in Italian because the head of the Scrolls Committee right now is Gabriel Boccaccini, who's an Italian. I can't read either of those languages. It's too late for me. Too late to learn them. I'm missing that. Oh, I'm sorry to get off on that, but we'll finish this up. The language was consistent with the polyglot nature of a community of Greek-speaking Jews in a Roman colony, best known for her studies of the Knights Templar, according to Gary Wayne, a very evil secret society started by the Essenes, who she claims at one stage preserved the shroud. She said what she had deciphered was the death sentence on a man called Jesus the Nazarene. If that man was also Christ, the Son of God, it's beyond my job to establish. I didn't set out to demonstrate the truth of faith. I'm a Catholic, but all my teachers have been atheists or agnostics I can attest to that. Or deviants. And the only believer among them was a Jew. I forced myself to work on this as I would have done on any other archaeological find. That quote is dynamite. Let's end up now. One more paragraph. The Catholic Church has never either endorsed the Turin Shroud or rejected it as inauthentic. Pope John Paul II arranged for public showings in 1998 and 2000, saying, "The shroud is an image of God's love as well as of human sin. The imprint left by the tortured body of the crucified one, which attests to the tremendous human capacity for causing pain and death to one's fellow man, stands as an icon of the suffering of the innocent in every age." How was my Pope Carol Wojtyła imitation? Carol Wojtyła. Wow. Okay. Pope Benedict the 16th is to pray before the shroud when it's put on show again next spring in Turin, whenever that was. Well, this is my recommendation from Pope Benedict XVI. Yes, I was in Hitler Youth. I killed many children when the Führer told me to go forth there in France, kill as many as you can, kill Jews, kill children, whoever happened to be, and then become Pope. Dig me up. Call on St. Peter, get my bone up out of the ground and bring me back to life so I can be Führer forever. Sieg Heil! That was an imitation of Pope Benedict XVI. That wasn't my own personal feelings, of course. Just one more Turin claim. The first person who said to have been seen faint letters on the controversial linen was the Italian Pietro Uglotti in 79. Using digital image processing, he reported the existence of Greek and Latin letters written near the face. Now, what they did instead of a toe tag, they put a collar on them. And these things were pretty big. Then, Uglotti's findings were further studied in 1997 by the late André Marion, director of the Institut l'Optique Theoretique et Appliquée d'Orsay, France, and his student Anne-Laurie Courage. Interesting here, the two names of these fellows, Pietro and André. Let's transliterate these names. Peter and Andrew. Name games, aren't they fun? Look at the last of the chat, and then I'll thank you, and we will go on. Yes. Driving the bus to Sheol. All right, that brings up something here. That is C.S. Lewis's fictional story called The Great Divorce. You know that story. It's lengthy. It's a story of people in hell taking a vacation. They get on the bus in this gray land down under where the sun never shines and there's coal dust everywhere and it's horrible and everybody's gray and everybody's unhappy. And they get to go to heaven, just a tour. A lot of characters are introduced there from hell, and they get up there to heaven and they try to step out of the bus, but the grass is like crystal to them, cuts them to pieces. The atmosphere is so gay, friendly, and fresh, they can't stand it. And the angel that is their guide says, look, I'm going to give you an offer today. Anybody who wants to stay in heaven out of hell can stay. No takers except one. A little guy with a lizard on his shoulder, gray. Remember the story? I love it so much. He says, oh, I would love to stay, but this little pest on my shoulder keeps biting at my ear. He bites at my ear, and then he whispers in my ear, we got to go home. I can't stay here. So I guess I'll just have to go home. Finally, the angel convinces this guy, take him throwing down, step on him. You've got to do that, then you can stay. Well, finally, this little guy gets the courage. He takes this lizard off his shoulder, throws it on, stomps on him. All of a sudden, the lizard becomes a great white charger. And the man becomes a great knight, gets on the lizard, which was lost, and rides off to the city. What a story. The Great Divorce, C.S. Lewis. Hey, the hand. The hand. The hand. Ah. That's Peter Lorre. All right. Too bad Bishop Ragesh isn't here to do a few of his. He can do you pretty good, Allison. Okay, all right. Thank you for coming tonight. Bless you all. It's been fun. And I'll see you on Friday night. I'll try to get back on that Melchizedek. And there's been some new discoveries there, by the way, on Melchizedek and Joseph and the Egyptian connection. I'm going to nail that thing down Friday. Bless you, keep you, face shine upon you. Until we meet again in this world or the other.